Don't be fooled. Meritocracy is a lie. See, Americans are sold the idea that hard work and talent alone determine success, but in reality, the playing field is rigged. Systemic barriers, race, wealth, gender, nepotism decide who gets ahead long before effort enters the equation. The richest students buy their way into elite schools. Connections trump qualifications in job markets. Policies gut diversity programs in the name of fairness while ignoring centuries of inequality. If meritocracy were real, janitors working two jobs would be CEOs, and brilliance wouldn't be buried under poverty. Hard work does matter, but privilege matters more. And until we dismantle these built-in advantages, the myth of meritocracy will keep gaslighting the people it fails. A perfect example of this is the firing of General Charles C.Q. Brown Jr., the first Black Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, a four-star fighter pilot with 40 years of service, a man who has dedicated his life to protecting this country. Parenthetically, he was fired by his boss, who happens to have an inferior resume and clearly didn't get his job because of merit. And how did Trump justify the firing of General Brown? Well, he did it in his favorite medium, a tweet, dripping this time in false praise. I want to thank General Charles C.Q. Brown for his 40 years of service to our country, including as our current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He is a fine gentleman and an outstanding leader, and I wish a great future for him and his family. Don't let the perceived cordial tweet fool you. The truth is, it goes much deeper. The New York Times reported that Trump was never able to get over a video General Brown recorded in the wake of George Floyd's murder, where General Brown reflected on his own experiences as a Black man in the Air Force. Let's take a look at that video.
Many of you may be wondering what I'm thinking about the current events surrounding the tragic death of George Floyd. Here's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how full I am with emotion, not just for George Floyd, but the many African Americans that have suffered the same fate as George Floyd. I'm thinking about protests in my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. I'm thinking about my Air Force career, where I was often the only African American in my squadron, or as a senior officer, the only African American in the room. I'm thinking about wearing the same flight suit with the same wings on my chest as my peers, and they being questioned by another military member, are you a pilot? I'm thinking about how I sometimes felt my comments were perceived to represent the African American perspective, when it's just my perspective informed by being African American. I'm thinking about some of the insensitive comments made without awareness by others. Finally, I'm thinking about my historic nomination to be the first African American to serve as the Air Force Chief of Staff. I'm thinking about the African Americans that went before me to make this opportunity possible. I'm thinking about the immense expectations that come with this historic nomination, particularly through the lens of current events plaguing our nation.
It was this video that got General Brown fired. Now, Trump didn't fire the general himself. He's way too petty, too scary, too immature to do that, to call the man into his office, have a conversation, an honest conversation with him. Instead, he had his newly appointed Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, a man chosen to dismantle everything Brown stood for, to do his dirty work. Now, for those who may not be familiar with Pete Hegseth, he is a former Fox News pundit. Now, he is an Army veteran, but most importantly, he is a news anchor. And prior to his confirmation, Hegseth said in very clear terms that he wanted to see the military purged of what he called woke officials who supported DEI initiatives. So that automatically put a target on General Brown's back. Take a listen to an interview from last November when Pete Hegseth appeared on the Sean Ryan Show.
The dumbest phrase on planet Earth in the military is our diversity is our strength. You got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke, it's got to go.
Now, this is Pete Hegseth trying to convince you that somehow DEI is the equivalent of being unqualified. That's what Trump, the right, the MAGA supporters of Trump would have you believe. But I'm here to tell you, DEI has nothing to do with anyone's qualifications. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is just about including people who are talented, who are qualified into a workplace that historically they have been locked out of. And if this is all about merit, let's compare the resumes, the background, the experiences of Pete Hegseth to those of the general. Starting with Pete Hegseth, as I said, was a Fox News contributor and then a co-host and an anchor on Fox News. He was an infantry officer in the U.S. Army National Guard. Now, no, I didn't say general. I said infantry officer. He participated, let's give him his credit, in active duty deployments. He did achieve the rank of major, a mid-level again, ranking in the Army National Guard. And he happened to have been a former executive director for two nonprofit organizations, one called Vets for Freedom and one called Concerned Veterans for America. And if you Google those organizations, you will see lots of folks saying that when he was the executive director of both, he didn't do such a good job. In fact, they would say he did a horrible job as a nonprofit leader. Now, let's look at what his resume tells us. It says he has the least amount of military experience of any defense secretary in recent history for this country. He has zero experience in leading the Pentagon. He has zero experience leading large-scale military operations. He has zero experience in national defense policy. Well, some other things you need to know about Pete Hegseth. He faced a sexual assault allegation. He was accused of financial mismanagement. Again, back to those two nonprofit organizations. I said some folks said he did a horrible job. Others say he was involved in financial mismanagement. And according to his Fox News colleagues, the folks that work with him every day, they said he had a drinking problem. And don't forget, his own mother wrote an email where she said he was a despicable human being, basically said he abused women in his life. Now, she later retracted her statement, said it was a mistake. But if your own mother writes an email calling you a despicable human being, I think we should take note of that. Now, let's compare what you've just learned about Pete to what we know about General Brown. General Brown was the first African-American to lead a branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. He was the 21st chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was the 22nd Chief of Staff of the Air Force. He logged over 3,000 flight hours as a fighter pilot, including 130 combat hours. Now, remember, I didn't mention combat hours when I talked about Pete Hegseth's background. More on General Brown that makes him so incredibly qualified. He commanded the Pacific Air Forces. He commanded the U.S. Air Force's Central Command, the 31st Fighter Wing, the 31st Fighter Wing, the 8th Fighter Wing, the 78th Fighter Squadron, and the U.S. Air Force Weapons School. General Brown also served as Deputy Commander of U.S. Central Command, and to put a cherry on top of all of this, he was named to Time's 100 Most Influential People. What we also know about General Brown, no allegations of sexual assault, no allegations of drinking on the job, no allegations of financial mismanagement of any organization that he has commanded or he's led. No emails from his mother calling him a despicable human being. Yet somehow the man with the least amount of experience, less leadership experience, and no record of commanding troops at the highest level gets to fire one of the most accomplished military leaders of our time. Now, how did that happen? It happened because of nepotism, favoritism, and loyalty to Donald Trump. Now, it's not nepotism in the purest form, in the sense that Pete Hegseth is not related to Donald Trump, but he is like a son, a brother, a nephew. He is someone that was close to Donald Trump because he was loyal. He was loyal to Donald Trump. He was willing to speak the words, to repeat the words of Donald Trump. He was willing to do Trump's bidding. He was willing to say and do anything that supported the MAGA right. And when you express your loyalty to Donald Trump, you get rewarded. You get big jobs. You get appointments that you're not even qualified for. So when Donald Trump, when the MAGA voters talk to you about meritocracy and say this country is built on merit, remind them of this example. Give them the receipts, because we have the receipts. Show them this video that compares the resume of Pete Hegseth to General Brown and ask them, where is the merit? Where is the merit that would dictate that Pete Hegseth even get this appointment, or that he would be the one allowed to fire someone like General Brown? And also tell them that we have the receipts on why General Brown was fired. Had nothing to do with his qualifications or lack thereof, because he was overqualified. But it had everything to do with him expressing the reality of what he experienced as a Black man in the military, an experience that resonates with so many African Americans in this country. Whether you're a man or a woman, the military, working for the government, working for a private company, we know that we are often sitting side by side to mediocre white people that we often have to train, that we often have to teach the job to, that we watch get promoted ahead of us, even though we may have more degrees, more education, more experience. So don't talk to us like we're idiots, or don't try to gaslight us about merit in this country. This country has and continues to be about supporting, giving advantages to folks that look like the people in control. And in case you don't know, at this moment in our history, the people in control at the White House and most major corporations in this country look like Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay fighting for justice. I'm Areva Martin, and this has been The Special Report. If you want more information about The Special Report, follow me across all social platforms at Areva Martin, subscribe to my YouTube page, and share The Special Report.